And last question, and before we go to the photo react series, what's the difference in cultures when they set that standard of accountability? So the difference between the Miami and the Knicks, or San Antonio and the Knicks, when a player is maybe not doing what he's supposed to be doing or not as responsible, are they really saying, dude, you get it together, or we're shipping you out?
Yeah, they do a really good job of factoring in character with the type of players that they sign. So it's not like they have a cast of characters that don't already kind of fit the Spurs way, or the Miami Heat way. There's a Miami Heat type of player, right? When I played with the Knicks, it was a disaster because, the locker room, the trade with Melo, I was on that team when Melo came and half the team left, and it was just the culture was bad. And so you kind of see that, in the different types of organizations.
T-Dubs, let's take it away to the photo react series.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds awfully familiar in terms of style to Coach Bennett. All right, let's jump into, and for those listening, we'll put this on YouTube, but I will try our best. I know I don't do a great job describing the first photo. Is Adam Hall flying in the Reebok Answer 4s, which, by the way, I loved. That was so cool in terms of not being sponsored by Reebok. That was terrible. But the Answer 4s, that was a cool moment. But I wanted you to talk about Adam Hall for a minute. He goes to, he's kind of an underrated guy in terms of UVA history, but in terms of like the highlights that he brought, and he had some big shots over his course of his career. What do you remember about him?
Yeah, I gotta say, I got a lot of disappointment with Adam Hall. He was by far the most talented guy in the program. I mean, his athleticism, his strength, he should have been an NBA player. I think, especially our junior year, Adam sat out a lot of that year with an injury, and I never questioned anybody's injury. You don't know other people's bodies, but I just wish that we could have had a healthier Adam Hall while I played there, because the guy was phenomenal talent. And one of those things, man, I wish I could have brought out more in him myself as well.
And the next one, we had Scott Ratcliffe on. This is a picture of Keith, Jenifer, and Pete Gillen. And let's just say Jerry had some interesting stories about Keith. What do you remember about him and maybe his relationship with Pete?
Yeah, Keithy was talented, man. Quick guard, stubborn, very stubborn, and in his kind of ways. And so that didn't really work out too well for him with Pete, but it was an interesting time. I'll say that.
By the way, TW calls Keith Jenifer Keith Jenifer because he had no J.
Hey, well, that it was more his first year. I think he shot like 13. I think he shot 13% from three that year, and just a lot of people started saying that. I definitely didn't come up with it. I don't have that level of creativity for that, but it was like that was what everyone called him. It was terrible, but it was also like then he left, and he's kind of been the butt of a lot of UVA jokes over the years. But just wanted to hear your take on him, because I imagine none of that is true, but it's always fun to hear. Next one. This game, now this is a picture of Dan DeCal going up, making a drive. But we talked about this prior. That game, I want to say you had 30. That was probably the most impressive game you had in your career in the tournament. And J.C. Mathis goes to the line. We're up 3. He misses the front end of that 1-and-1. And then Dan DeCal comes down. Like, what do you remember about this? And you said it earlier, it kind of haunts you, but what do you specifically remember about the end of that game scenario?
I don't remember crying that hard since my dad died. Literally. Like, I was devastated because, you're up 3, you're going for a 1-on-1. You think that you got the game. And it was devastating, man. That was one of the worst losses I've ever had on any level.
Yes. Virginia history, it's a program altering right? I mean, I was telling these guys before, Pete Gillen did a Q&A, I think when he went to CBS, and he was just like, ask me anything. And I didn't give him any context. I just said, what happens J.C. Mathis hits the front end of that one-on-one? And he was just like, my life is completely different, I think. From one shot, like alters the history of everything. And that kind of leads to this slide right here, because we were talking like, what was that like? You had Indiana State, and this is the bracket, and this is our regional bracket. You had Indiana State as a 13 seed who upset Oklahoma right before, and then underneath you had Temple making it. So it was like, yeah, this is just looking at this makes me upset, because it's like one shot and maybe we're in the Final Four, right? Is that how you looked at it too back in the day?
It's absolutely how I looked at it. And by the way, I was so confident. My mom wanted to go to the game, and I'm like, no, Mom, don't come to the first round. Just come to the second round. So my mom didn't come because I convinced her not to, and she did. She still gets on me about that to this day.
And that was, yeah. I mean, I think about that game way more than I should, even however many years it's been. But it like creeps into your mind, especially like Gonzaga's run started against us, right? And like,
well, first of all, they shouldn't have been a 12 seed.
They should not. They were favored. They were favored. Let's keep it real.
There's no way they should have been a 12 seed. They screwed us.
Yeah, totally. But that was like the beginning of this, like we always talk about, that's like the axis in terms of like Virginia's decline along with Gonzaga's uprisal into college.
100%. I mean, right? That momentum is the reason why we had such a disappointing year the following year.
Yep.
It was terrible.
It's crazy. That's crazy to think about. And well, this change it up a little bit. Willie, what do you remember about Willie? You talked about it a little bit. He was on our podcast, and he was so great in terms of like talking about, he gave you a lot of props in terms of one of the guys he thought so highly of. What do you remember about his game?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, first of all, I heard of Willie because he was a McDonald's All-American, and he was a lefty. And I just remember him kind of taking me under his wing. I was so green coming to college. I didn't drink. I didn't do anything. And I remember, Willie kind of took me under his wing. I remember we were in open gym, and I was doing a dunk, and he just was like, man, he was so impressed. He was like, man, do that over again. Do it over again. He was just very encouraging for me. He was well liked. He was kind of a popular kid. So he was one of those guys I looked up to.
And then this picture, rest in peace. Big Smooth, Chris Williams. Just wondering if you had a story for us, because I know another name that is kind of underappreciated, that I want to bring a little light to.
Yeah, man, one of the kindest human beings I've ever met. Just one of the nicest. I don't know if you can meet anybody that ever say anything bad about that guy. One of the nicest guys ever, and underappreciated. A guy that, nowadays with stretch fours, he was kind of that undersized, stretch four that is so popular now. But just a jewel of a guy.
Doug, do you remember anything? You're probably out of pocket for these.
No, right? You're making me think, man, because like guys that like us that didn't overlap or have the same coaches, you guys were caught in between that weird period of like the end of Jeff Jones, the beginning of Gillen, the really good year, then the kind of demise. So I remember this team well, and I think he's from Alabama, Chris, right?
He committed to Jeff Jones, and I think he stayed with Pete Gillen, even though he wanted to leave. But
yeah, and I always remember that. Like for example, Roger, for you, I think more of you as a pro basketball player who went to the University of Virginia, right? Like I think more like of my guys as UVA guys, maybe they played in the NBA or didn't. So you guys kind of got caught in that weird spot in between,
Yeah, and for sure.
Access idea, like we need to incorporate like you guys' years back with my guys and do more things together.
Yeah.
I'll do my version of a fresh story for Big Smooth. So his first year coming in, he's playing at the Dell. The old school Dell. I'm playing pickup, only Asian kid out there as usual. But I could play a little bit, and I was shooting around. They said they needed one more guy, and I was going up against Chris. Now I had never met him before. I was playing against him. His team proceeded to just demolish the team I was on. I didn't get the ball a single time, and then we lost. Everyone leaves, and then Chris comes over to me and says, "Yo, I know you can play. I can just tell." And they didn't pass you the ball once, and that's unfair. And I want you on my team because I want them to watch you play and how it should be done. And he proceeded to pick me up, and we won a whole bunch of games. And he would kick it to me. I hit a few threes, and he would look at the guys that didn't pass to me, and it was like, that's the type of dude he was. Like, I didn't even know at the time. And then afterwards, he's like, yeah, I'm Chris Williams. I'm coming to play, And like, that's the type of dude he was. Like, picking up random kid and just like making my life, right? In terms of like fandom, like, we have these little moments that you remember. And that was one for me, right? Going to Dell just by myself, wanting to hoop. And, the ACC, who ends up being rookie of the year, just, believed in me just a couple games. But that like is very telling in terms of who he is as a dude.